Test, test. 1, 2. Test, test. Okay, got it between. Test, test. 1, 2. Test, test. Okay, trying something new with the audio. Think I got it working. That's what took me so long to get started. That and our internet's been a little iffy. Yay, I'm not repeating myself into my own headphones. Okay, so yeah, the test did work out well. Good, okay. Need to be that though. Hold on. Give me a second. I'm just making sure I got everything set up right. And it looks good. Alright, so yeah, sorry for the short delay. This is going to go up on YouTube. We're going to finish, mostly because I just need to actually finish this last little bit of editing on this one. I'm going to work on chapter 20 of The Last Guardian, recording it, and whenever we're done with that, if we still got time, I'll probably stop the stream and start another one with Super Robot Wars. Why? Or if we have anyone on by then, I'll take a poll. This is my newer story, Sparks in the Dark. It's a bit like The Seed in the Void, in which it's not a priority story so much as it is something I wrote to scratch an itch. Where A Seed in the Void is written to be basically biotech, A Seed in the Dark is supposed to be, how to put this, Home Animation meets Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead Facility Start, with a bit of RoboCraft thrown in. I like Home Animations, and I think it's grand, because their whole animation thing with the tank characters is quite interesting. Especially some of the larger characters, or monsters. But one of the big things that's been going on here lately is the bigger characters, monsters, keep getting torn apart and put back together again, torn apart, put back together again. But instead of taking apart their enemy, which they do this in some of the episodes, but they haven't recently, instead of taking apart the enemy and using them, because again, these are machines, using them to improve themselves, they just keep fixing them up the same way. over and over again. Yes, there is some advancement and there is some changes, but I don't know how to explain it very well. One of the big things that drew me to the series early on was when I was watching the English version. This comes much earlier in the English than it does in the actual original language one, because the creator I think he wanted to like clean up the timeline a little. But in the English version, it's pretty early on. But there's a scene where the character KV6 is trapped in a facility. He keeps getting torn up, but this engineer dude keeps putting him back together again, and they keep having to take parts to repair and improve him from the various foes they defeat. And he looks pretty darn interesting. I like the whole ripping apart the opponent to build up themselves sort of thing. It's, for lack of a better word, because I literally can't think of a better word to explain it, a very interesting and, again, lack of a better word, cannibalistic power system. I like the idea of you defeat a foe and it has maybe a better gun, you take that gun and you add it to yourself sort of mentality. It made the characters feel scrappy. It made them feel like, yeah, they're taking hits, they're getting hurt, they're getting worn down, but they are still going to be tough enough to give a brawl. Sometimes the patch together upgrades would even be actually good improvements and would actually carry over to the character's repaired design. And I liked that. So I wanted to keep that element of it. Which is also why it say it has a bit of cog mind in it. Because I will not lie, the best way I could think of without just one-for-one writing fan fiction for home animations or Grandin, which I didn't want to do, was to make the main character a robot. It starts off in a tank chassis, but very early on it's swapping out parts, it's improving itself, it's upgrading. I wanted you're trapped in a horrible place and you're going to need to salvage everything to try and survive. And if you want out, you're going to have to fight your way out of the Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead lab start, with the idea of later taking over the facility and using it as a main base while expanding outward. I wanted to very literally make a scrappy character. Not just in the terms of they're hard to take down in a fight, but in the terminology they will literally take apart their opponents for patches between fights. Literally a scrap work of a character. It was just an idea that was rolling around in my head. I couldn't get rid of it, and I really, really wanted to write it. So I'm writing it. But here's the one annoying part about it. I'd like to put in the shared universe of a Nanite and a Fantasy, Broken Clanker. No, not Broken Clanker. Why did I say that one? Nano Fantasy class tanker. The Last Guardian, and A Seed in the Void. I just don't know if I can. Because, like I said, this is going to be a very Cataclysm, Dark Days Ahead sort of story, not just the start. The main character is going to be dealing with weird shit from the very get-go. Even once they escape the facility, it is going to be weird outside. And I haven't exactly thought of how to thought of a good way to explain that away, other than maybe it's a space in between worlds. I don't know. I can't really go too in depth into detail without giving spoilers for the other stories. Sorry, Rusty distracted me. I don't know if you can hear her, but yeah. There's a 90-pound snoring lovable lump wandering around in here with me. So yeah. Just double checking my audio. Like I said, this is the first time I've used this setup, and I'm wanting to make sure it works.
Once it was disconnected, I spliced into it, taking control. This gave me access to the cameras in the nearby corridors, but disconnected, I spliced into the network, taking control. Taking control. This gave me access to the cameras in the nearby corridors, but not very far. Each intersection was assigned a note. It was set up this way to prevent digital intrusion. This one is Disconnected from the rest of the network, it was set up this way to that could control the section even if it was disconnected from the rest of the network. It was set up this way to prevent digital intrusion. This one is maintaining system functionality in the zones in case of being cut off from the rest of the facility, while the nodes were just basic processing cores. While the nodes were just basic processing cores, they could keep minimum facility functionality running on their own, and while they weren't an
I'm just touching it up because it needs some work.
While the nodes were just basic processing cores, they could keep minimum facility functionality running on their own. Processing cores, they could easily keep minimum facility functionality running on their own, and while they weren't an excessive boost in processing power, it was still very useful with my current position as
I know that paragraph is long, but I can't find a good way to break it up. Maybe my roommate can. She's better at this stuff than I am. Oh well.
as possible, and the added boost in processing power as well as broadcast range thanks to the node. I bit the bullet and sent the 3 drones out. With the added boost in processing power as well as broadcast range, thanks to the node, I bit the bullet and sent the 3 drones out. Out.
Okay, so to clarify my editing style. So you see how all these are in yellow? These are just first draft edits. They will get a second draft they'll get a second draft with the aid of my roommate, and then a third draft, which is pretty much just a read through by the auto reader, or the read aloud, with me and her both listening to it and fixing any final errors. We still make mistakes, don't get us wrong. We aren't perfect at this or particularly good, but we do our best to try and clean these up. Sorry. I got a message on my phone. Had to check that real quick. I just need a minute to message back. Blasted thing. I told him I didn't have time for this. I'm trying to wrap this up as quick as I can. I gotta take my aunt. She's too old to drive herself anymore. To a doctor's appointment tomorrow, and for some reason, my cousin is pestering me now of all times about it. Ah, shoot. Ignore those. I disabled them. I just need to put that somewhere.
Sophia didn't mind Christopher the same way the others seemed to, though she guessed that was more due to her powers helping her get a read on people. He was just so angry, but he wasn't angry at them. He was just angry in general, though he hid it well. He didn't want to hurt them or cause them problems, if anything, to her. It seemed he'd gone out of his way to try and fix the problems he caused.
Real quick.
He had even vented to her once about how bad his father treated him. Though truly, she didn't really understand that.
Sometimes it doesn't do that, sometimes it does do that, and it annoys the heck out of me. It won't let me, I'll leave it playing and it won't let me scroll down.
Recoiled against it not just because it simply didn't like working with anything holy, but because it was a bold-faced lie. There was some truth in there. He was powerful, yes, and something else he didn't know. He was not even close to the gods, like a demigod or one of their monstrous offspring. He crumpled to the floor, panting, thankful he had at least managed to confirm that much. He then upturned his flask, downing the entire thing before just rolling over and lying there on the floor. As he stared up,
Where's his name? I want to get the spelling right. So yeah, I'm using the Old English spelling of this name. I don't know who's shown up in the free to read version yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But yeah, I'm using the Old English spelling of the name. Uh, and the reading software doesn't like that. Or the grammar software doesn't like that. Christopher woke up the next morning. With one heck of a hangover and a stiff back from falling asleep on the floor. He knew he was an idiot when he did it last night. He knew he was an idiot now. And the sore cramp in his back was proving that point. He stretched, got up, and went downstairs for breakfast. Finding Sophia, Catherine, and the mayor all in the middle of breakfast, which was new. As far as he knew, the three, well, having to work in close proximity with each other for the past few days, usually didn't eat breakfast together. Ah, at last, our uninvited guest is awake. Catherine said, levitating over a chair for him. Quickly followed by a floating plate. Chair and plate for him. Sorry about that. Oops. Sorry. I don't know if you heard that popping sound. I've had a really bad Yeah, so we had a bit of an ant problem recently, and I can't leave. So, during the summer, I moved my workspace out onto our windowed in porch. It's nice. It's got AC, it's got views, it's got wraparound windows for great views. Um, and it's just a nice place to work, in all honesty. But I've had an ant issue the past few weeks, so I can't leave anything out here. I don't even know where they're coming from. I don't, like, keep food out here or nothing. So I can't even keep a Mountain Dew, which is what I was drinking, in a regular glass. I have to seal it so I don't get ants into it, and that's what the popping sound, if you keep hearing it, is. Finally. I hate that. Every time I start talking into this dictate program, it capitalizes it, and I have to go back in and uncapitalize it. It's annoying. Yeah, sorry. I was working late on those documents last night. Decided to have a nightcap before bed and ended up finishing off the flask. Shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have done that. Christopher sighed, plopping down in his seat, thankful for the small pile of greasy meat on his plate. Normally, meat would be a luxury, but with an army of monsters at the gates, it was pretty much the only stable source of food they had at the moment. He didn't know why they didn't just grow crops. But if they were this far out and they weren't fully self-sufficient in that way, there had to be a darn good reason for it. Yes. Yes, well, the word has come down from our benefactor. Your Hey, thanks for the comment. I didn't get a notification for that, so sorry for not spotting it sooner. Anyways, where was I? Requested incarceration. Has come to an end. You're free to roam around the village as you see fit, though it is heavily implied that you are not to go past the residentials residences issue into the underground sections. While I highly doubt you'll be injured or harmed in any way if you do attempt this, the few people who have tried to go deeper have found their way barred. Before being escorted, or in the case of one very lost, very drunk man, carried out. I'm pretty sure the only one of us who would be allowed to go too far into the underground is Sophia. The young girl's head shot up when the mayor mentioned her name. It seemed she had been a little too engrossed in her breakfast to pay attention to the conversation, though he didn't blame her. For a poor seamstress daughter, a breakfast this exquisite didn't happen every day. Even if it was little more than a few eggs and some lightly seasoned meat. If you had to guess, some salt, black pepper, and maybe an herb or two from the nearby forest. That that was another thing that had interested him. There were no salt mines in the area, and yet Austin seemed to have the capability to produce the stuff. Sophia, if you don't mind me asking, do you know where Austin gets his salt? It was my understanding that there weren't any mines in the area. Asked before taking another bite of his meat. The girl got that odd look that children. Only children seem to be able to do. That children made when they were focusing on something or trying to think of a particularly hard problem. Before her eyes glowed for half a second. He wants to know why you ask first. Sophia asked, seemingly curious herself at this point. Well, this far inland, salt's hard to come by without a mine. The nearest mine is in the Duchy over. And without a salt marsh or ocean to extract salt from using purification magic, well, the stuff is rather valuable for how hard it is to get. A mine or The stuff is rather valuable around here for how hard it is to get. I mean, I've always wanted to be a merchant, so it just... I guess it's just the old... drive to try and be a merchant rearing its head again. In all honesty, it's just passing curiosity. Sighed with a small shrug. Assuming Austin wouldn't actually answer his question. However, after a few seconds, Sophia's eyes glowed again, and she said, "He gets it from the monsters. When he breaks down the bodies after we burn them, he says he extracts all sorts of stuff from them. He uses it to make the coal, the salt, and he can even use it to make bits of metal as well. Though it takes a lot to make any one of these." He said it's like alchemy. He's breaking it down to its base elements, and then just making blocks of those elements to store them. For later use. That through for a loop. He had heard the phrase from hunters to always use every part of the animal you could. The bones, the pelts, even the organs that weren't edible. If they had a use for them, hunters often tried to use them. Did their best. However, with the ongoing battle, they couldn't make use of all of them. it was just too much. All of them, it was just too much. The corpses, it was just too much. And they couldn't afford to leave them around, as the dungeon would consume them and reuse them, or they would begin to rot and spreading disease. The fire pits in which the corpses were burned were near constantly going. A light. As guards and Austin's metal beasts tossed pile after pile of corpses in. Despite their best efforts, the air outside was rather foul. With the smell of death. Was more than a little sure the only reason the inside smelled insides of any house around here smelled any better would be thanks to a sorry. Allergies. Sorry. Basic cleanliness ward. Ward. While the town mage wasn't too exceptionally powerful or well trained, I might have to go stop for a second here. Tissue. Sorry. Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna go take a quick pill and blow my nose. I'll be right back. I'll leave you with a snoring dog. Back can I go? Alright, I am back. Sorry, took a quick bio break to take some allergy meds and get a drink. But she more than had enough power to set them up. And a basic ward like that shouldn't be too hard to begin with. But he was getting off topic with that. If Austin really could use something like, or actually, yeah, wrong button. Alchemy or something similar to make use of the the materials within those pits after they had been burned. He could, in theory, reuse just about anything. Intuit. Deep into his own thoughts, there was a small flash, and Austin appeared before them. You wanted to speak with me? Directly? Ah, yes. I hope I'm not overstepping with these questions, and feel free to ignore them if I am. But I was wondering, if you're getting the salt, the salt from the creatures you're breaking down, where is all the metal coming from? This got Austin to think for several minutes. This got Austin to think for several minutes. The strange metal eye that somewhat came off the side of his head, rotating as if inspecting very soul for any signs of deception. At first, much of the metal came either from my supply rooms or from the wreckage of my ship. That last part had thrown him for a loop. They were a very, very long way from any major waterways. The only one he thought that would be large enough for a vessel, bigger than a small dinghy, would be the river that connected to the capital. That was a duchy and a half away. A ship? But we're nowhere near any waterway. Or is it... like those sky ships the dwarfs make? Dwarfs. Catherine asked, eyeing the floating figure in the middle of the table. Oh, it looked like he was sitting on the table, if it wasn't for the fact his legs were going clean through it. How had Christopher not noticed that? Well, regardless, he was just more... happy he wasn't the one to have asked the question. No. Best I understand it, you don't have the right word for the type of vessel in your language. The closest translation I can find is void or star. Void or star. Ship. My ship did not sail the seas, nor the skies, though I have no doubt it would have been capable of doing so, if I had ever saw the need to. No, my vessel sailed the infinite darkness between the worlds. Darkness between worlds and stars. Austin let that sink in for a moment before he created a rough and he did mean rough estimate of what he assumed the planet looked like, based off of a globe he had seen in Catherine's home. In his outstretched hand. This is your world. This is a rough approximation of and this is a rough estimate of your solar system based off of what I can see from your night sky. The small orb in Austin's palm shrank, followed by 3 others spinning around what resembled a fireball? Like I said, I do not have access to accurate charts, so this is the best approximation I could make. It is not accurate by any means. But is the approximation of what I currently believe your solar system looks like. Wait, why do you have a term in your language for a solar system, but not a void ship? Regardless, this big ball of gas and fire in the middle is your sun. The orbiting spheres around it are worlds. Most aren't habitable. The one closer to the star is too hot. Its surface is likely equivalent to what you would see in a burning volcano. Where the world further out is too cold. Well, I doubt it has ice, judging by its red coloration. It's likely colder than any place on this world, even in the warmest areas. I can not only say my ship could not only sail between it, these worlds, but between systems as well. I believe the metal demons in your church's mythos also possessed a void ship. Which is the most likely reason they were able to kidnap humans. I won't go too in depth, as I do not wish to start any philosophical or religious debates. But I knew the humans before they ended up on this world. Before a great and powerful empire tried to wipe them out. My guess is the monster from your legends was some sort of slavers who captured human refugees during that catastrophe.
Austin paused here, considering just how much more to tell them. Meanwhile, Christopher's mind just began to spin. He had to activate Poker Face to keep his face from paling at the reveal. As he swallowed down the vial that was working its way up the back of his throat. In which I fought against the very empire that tried to wipe them out. As I was busy dealing with that conflict, I cannot say what happened here. I came along much, much later. And, in all honesty, I still don't quite know how I got here. I was injured in a fight, my vessel badly damaged. I had to flee between systems, and in all honesty, had no idea where I was going. I was just trying to escape. I was running, for lack of a better word. I mean that quite literally. There's no translation in your language for half the terms I'd need to explain this. But I hit something. I don't know what. I don't know how. I can barely remember it. All I can remember is an impact. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up. My ship is buried underground, upside down. And little Sophia here is being chased by a giant monster. A monster. I believe you more or less know the rest of the story from there. He reached for his glass. Reached for his glass of water and downed it in one go, very much wishing it was something a bit more strong like wine or spirits. He really, really hoped none of what he had just heard would be get him branded as a heretic. So, are you trying to mend your ship? And what about the rest of the metal? I don't know how big your vessel is, but you've invested quite a lot in the underground and the various metal beasts you employ. No, the vessel is beyond salvaging. I converted it into what you see underground. And while you're quite estimates of how much material I had to work with are quite off, considering you have no knowledge of the exact size of the vessel. I will say, currently, I'm mostly getting my metal from breaking down the scrap shell, or as your I guess the local name for them is scavenger beetles. And the various highly toxic metal minerals in the soil. The entire valley is filled with regolith. Regolith. I am only guessing here, but it's my assumption that when my ship crashed, it struck either a volcano or a very iron-rich deposit. Right, you wouldn't know. The same reason why meteors seem to rain down from the sky on fire is when an object falls from such an extreme height, it picks up so much speed, it gets incredibly hot. When my ship crashed, it didn't crash the same way a meteorite would. It tried to save itself up to the last moment. Slowing itself down dramatically, lest, well, none of you would be here. The vessel itself is quite large, and if it had struck your world at speed, it would have, well, let's just say none of you would be here. Face finally paled. Poker Face no longer being enough to contain his absolute shock and horror. He glanced around at the others around him and saw they were, well, distressed. They clearly didn't understand the scope of what Austin had said. His detect lies hadn't been powerful enough to give him a full understanding. But when Austin had said they wouldn't be here, that was an extreme understatement. If his ship had crashed into their world at its full speed, it would have been apocalyptic. Nobody would be here. Just how big is your ship? Again, Austin took a moment before answering. If you really want to know, well, this valley that the village sits in, it's not a valley at all. It's a crater. My crater. 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 And what's left of my ship takes up almost 2/3 of that crater. Buried and grown over it may be. Beneath your feet is a massive complex of what, at one point, was an equally massive void vessel. Built to fight in wars that shattered worlds. Worlds. I may be crippled. I may be exhausted. I may be glitchy. But this dungeon was never going to win against me. I am... How do we put this? I'm playing nice. This world, it has its own system of power. It has its own culture, its own ecosystems. I don't want to disturb them. If push came to shove, I could wipe that dungeon off the map. But also create a giant crater full of poison that would take hundreds of years to heal. I don't want that. I wish to leave as small of a mark on this world as I can. So I'm taking everything with a very, very gentle touch. Do not get me wrong. I do not intend to sacrifice life. And I'm sickened by how much has been lost already. I want you to be assured I am pushing myself to my absolute limits that I can achieve without taking those more heavy-handed measures. I wish to remain as unknown as possible, to establish myself here. To learn of this world and its peoples. And in time, return to the heavens above. And the void beyond. I would like to see humanity returned to their former glory, but that would have to come far after me regaining my own strength. This world is, as I said, too heavily inhabited. It already has its own peoples, culture, and environment. I would likely have to find another habitable world, or, heavens forbid, forge one. Why the heck does the word meaning alter an environment to make it more habitable translate into the same word as smithing metal in your language? You know what? I should really stop asking these questions about language until I find someone who can give me an actual explanation beyond this. Just cramming the language itself into my head. Anyways, ignore that. But yes, I have much I'd like to achieve, much I'd like to get done, and I would like to do it with as light as a touch as possible. Until such time as I can even begin on these other goals, I will stay here and help this village. Mostly because I literally can't go anywhere else. I'm stuck in my ship. My creatures, as you call them, can travel freely, but I am far too anchored to the ship to be moved. While I can inhabit any of their forms, it is the equivalent of using a skill not truly moving into the body. They are too small, too weak for me. The only thing that can hold me and sustain me is the ship. Maybe in the future, when I once more have access to the heavens above, I can consider making myself a bit more mobile. But for the time being, I am quite literally stuck here. That was the first bit of news that had actually eased concerns. With Austin stuck in the valley, he wouldn't be able to project his strength at any great degree elsewhere anytime soon. While he should be, in theory, more concerned than relieved about that, especially considering he had already decided to throw his lot in with the strange spirit. The fact that this thing had weaknesses that was in fact weakened at the moment was relieving. Even though he had tried to use his skill to prove Austin wasn't a god or godly being, it still seemed like something far beyond the realm of mere mortals like himself. And if anything, the legends about such beings was true, they were not things to underestimate. Or infuriate. Alright, with that said and done, I think we'll call it there for the night. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, I do have a Patreon. I believe it's listed in my links here. And should be listed in the links on YouTube as well, because this will be going up on YouTube. I am honestly blanking. Sorry. Yeah, I do have a Patreon. I'm trying to get some support because, well, currently I'm between jobs, and this is what I do for my own mental health, in all honesty. And if I don't have to worry about making my next payment, or just heck, any amount of income right now would be a huge weight off my shoulders. So, yeah, just any help you could give, if you can give, is a huge bonus. I'm not going to. I have no intention of ever getting my content behind a paywall. That's just not my thing. I want to, if I do get anyone's support, I want it to be because they actually want to support me. And I hope to one day be able to write and do this more often because of it. But until that day comes, I will continue to try and do stuff like this. Work on my writing, get more out, and try and be more consistent. Like I said, I'm job hunting at the moment. I don't know what the future is going to hold. But yeah, thank you for all your support. And this is Wrecker, signing off. Oh, yeah, I don't think we're going to do SRW today, because this went a lot longer than I expected. If you guys actually want to see me continue one of my Let's Plays, or play a different game, I'm all ears. I really should put a list together sometime and put it up and see what people think. But yeah, properly this time. This is Record signing off. I actually get this thing. There we go.